You know that feeling when you've just come back from work or school and you know there is something productive you should be doing. Come on, where's the energy? Where's the hustle? Where is the grind? But instead, you'd rather admit that you would happily sleep under a bridge for the rest of your life than actually do anything to stop that from happening. So to feel something again, you throw on a movie or a YouTube video just to get that sweet dopamine hit and the glorious illusion that anything is possible. At one particular occasion when I felt like this, someone recommended me to watch Seven Samurai and Ikiru. And I thought, it's one of those high art movies that only a handful of people pretend to understand. Might as well get educated. And then when I watched them, it was like being punched in the gut so hard. Why is this not mainstream now? It was as if I had seen the light for the first time. Could movies get this good? It's so freaking sad that each Hollywood summer blockbuster that gets released today gets its truckloads of articles, video essays, and hour-long analysis, when you have movies like this that these same blockbusters can only dream of standing alongside. It isn't even fair to compare these. Which is sickly ironic because Kurosawa directly inspired one of the greatest directors of all time. Look at this scene from Once Upon a Time in the West. That's Kurosawa's Yojimbo. Tarantino's Kill Bill? Seven Samurai. Those wide establishing shots of Breaking Bad. Classic Akira Kurosawa. But even though these movies and shows are powerful in their own right, they still don't hold a candle to Kurosawa. The guy is a master at playing with your emotions. There is so much tension and grit in his scenes, and he knows just where to hit you when it matters. In Yojimbo, we can see the feet of an old man who has been helping our character throughout the whole story. The immediate reaction is straight up horror. The camera holds this shot for so long that you feel totally sunken in before the camera pans up to see his face, and you're like, yeah, the MVP, he lives! Ah! In his stories, there are real characters, consequences for your actions, and you don't get to survive if your moral compass is greater than the rest. You get to survive because you survived. The characters don't die for the greater good or greater sacrifice. I mean, yeah, but they also die out of spite. Like, oh my god. And there is no like edgy 16-year-old monologue or dialogue.
You don't speak because of Friedrich Nietzsche.
Yeah, God is dead and we have killed him. Kurosawa says,
神や仏は泣いているのだ。いや仏も救う術はないのだ。
Hollywood movies today get praised to high heaven when they have a real villain, a complex protagonist, when they explore the grey side of human morality. But here is Kurosawa, just casually taking the whole industry to school with his 7-decade-old movies. But what fascinates me the most is how freaking real they are. Like in The Seventh Samurai, defending the village is not a montage of white people renovating houses. It is a slow, deliberate process. Every detail is accounted for. Every barrier is precisely where it needs to be. And when the bandits eventually do come, you can't help but get this wide smile across your face. Like, yes, yes, the plan works. And you are so happy precisely because you saw the work that needs to be put into it. And that is also why the ending of this movie just totally breaks you. It totally caught me off guard the first time I watched it. After all the planning, skillful tactical moves, our titular 7 samurai have been reduced to 3. But they have still saved the village. They have laid their lives for a greater cause. We should be happy, right? Even though it is sad that they are dead. And then this one line just hits you like a truck.
負け戦だったな。勝ったのはあの百姓たちだ。わしたちではない。
Man, that's such a bleak ending. Because he's right. Villagers who begged for their help at first didn't even respect samurai enough to give them a proper greeting. They didn't have enough money to pay them, but they still chose to help. And in the end, the villagers just go back to their lives. The samurai are those who lost. The end shot is literally the burial site of our main characters. Can you imagine, for example, if Ford v Ferrari ended like this? The ending is already grim as it is with Miles's death. But imagine if the last shot of the movie was Miles's grave and his child besides it. That would be super, super dark. And it just wouldn't fly with Western audiences. It's not the cathartic final moment of empowerment that you would expect from the movie. And that is exactly the point. See, Over the years, Western audiences have developed a feeling that you should feel good after a movie. It should entertain you and make you feel happy. The hard work and sacrifice should mean something at the end of the day. But no, the life is much more complex than that. After you die, the life moves on without you, no matter what you have left behind. And Kurosawa is not afraid to show you that. In the end, that bleak ending is actually more helpful than the climactic final sacrifice. It is not feeding you a fabricated lie, so that after the initial shock, you feel like you have learned something about yourself. So my question and quest for today is, how do I lead you closer to our savior Kurosawa? I decided that the best way for someone to truly appreciate his stories is to watch a movie from his golden period, probably his best film, and therefore one of the greatest movies of all time. But you don't realize that at first glance. When you read this movie's synopsis, it borders on cliché at this point. You have seen it copied so many times already. The guy who has done the same bureaucratic job for 30 years of his life gets diagnosed with cancer. So realizing his time on this earth is limited, he lives his final days to the fullest. But what I like most about the character of Kanji Watanabe is that the whole second part of the movie, like a good hour, comes after the character dies. The first and last halves of the movie are perfect opposites to one another. One starts off as a typical feel-good story, and the other is a bitter reality. Like I said, at the start, the film seems to follow the conventional Hollywood trope. A character who, up to that point, was blind to the joys of life gets a wake-up call and learns the true meaning of life. He goes and gets closure for all the wrongdoings during the past. All is forgiven and he dies blissfully in peace and surrounded by friends and loved ones, where they all share his profound realizations that have left a deep mark on their lives. Yeah, that's how the first half wants you to feel the story will end, and the second half explains how utterly unrealistic that is. See, after Kanji Watanabe learns that he has cancer, he makes a withdrawal from his bank account and decides to spend it to somehow give meaning to these banknotes, since that is what he has spent his whole life accumulating. He goes to a bar, starts drinking, and we meet a novelist who offers to help our character see the beauty of life. So far, so good. Except, and we will come back to this character realizes something about Kanji Watanabe that we don't. Not just as audience, but as people.
過去の自分に反逆しようとしてんの。私はね、その反逆精神に至るだ。二人ならその瞬間から死んじまえ。ところが、あの人は違うんだ。その瞬間から生き始めたんだ。
He is a special case. He refuses to go out without making something of his time. He may only have a few months and may not be that young, but it is something he must do. And here we could draw a perfect parallel between Breaking Bad's Walter White and Kanji Watanabe, at least on the surface. Walter White is what we expect a character to be in that situation, because we have learned that through TV. He feels energetic, daring, alive, more reckless than a guy in his 20s, but this life gradually consumes him, where at the end we see this old man dying of cancer. That is how Walter's story ends. Imagine if Walter started his story in this state, because that is exactly the physical state Kanji Watanabe's story begins. During Breaking Bad, we almost forget that Walter even has cancer, because he's moving, jumping, driving around. And okay, he's a middle-aged man. He is not yet to be thrown out. But Watanabe isn't. He is 70. As much as he would like to do things that he didn't during his youth, you can't escape the fact that he's an old man dying of cancer. So to continue, the novelist keeps his promise. They change his look, go to a bar, brothel, another bar, party like there is no tomorrow. But Kanji just can't keep up, nor does this meaningless partying fulfill him in any way. He doesn't want to spend the rest of his time like this, and he just gets out of the car at the end of the night. And everything that I just said was communicated to the audience by a look that Kanji Watanabe gave to the novelist. Just a look. And there is the first clue as to why Akira Kurosawa's movies are so impactful. His scenes are long. They heavily rely on silence for the words to land. It is a well-known technique that for something to have more of an an impact, you let it grow in silence. We are surrounded by so much noise in everyday life that silence makes us feel uncomfortable, and there lies the power. Take again the example from Seven Samurai. We don't have to have a Jonathan Joestar monologue in which he explains his master plan, nor do we have to have a sad Naruto character talking to the camera scene. You don't have to explain anything for the emotion to land, but you have to build up that effect. And if our character explains what has happened, instead of letting us feel the moment, you rob the scene completely. It just doesn't have the same effect. YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok are flooded with short clips, either badass one-liners or emotional self-help monologues. And now it feels like movies are being made to fit that exact format. The new F1 movie is basically a collection of shorts stitched together. Every second of every scene is crafted like it's meant to go viral. And that is why Kurosawa lets his scene naturally build up to earn this sense of accomplishment. Going back to Ikiru, Kanji realizes that keeping up and living the crazy life is just not making him whole. So he decides to spend time with his younger coworker, which gives off real sugar daddy vibes and makes you feel really uncomfortable at times. The most bluntly obvious parallel to jump from this is like, oh, you know, she's young and he's old, and that is the contrast between them and their worldviews and blah 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 blah. It is not the fact that she's young and full of life that makes her interesting to spend time with Kanji Watanabe, but the fact that she's quitting her job after a year. Keep in mind, this is the 50s, where you could just walk up to your boss and say, I want a job, and you would have it for the rest of your life. She could stay at her position and gradually work her way up. It's not like she has money saved up to do something else. And there lies the parallel. They have no idea what to do with their time. But the thing that they were doing up till now is not working. And they are just not going back to how they lived. And here is why the novelist is right when he says Kanji Watanabe is different from the rest. And why the ending feels like a stab through the throat. Most people would just go back to the status quo. They would just keep doing what they were always doing. They wouldn't have the balls to do something else. And that is the most human state of all. We often think that we have learned the lesson. But more often than not, we need to learn the same thing over and over again just for a chance to learn something. We often know more about what we don't want than what we do. And those crystal clear realizations that we say to ourselves after we have watched a movie, heard a story about someone, or had one too many, are either forgotten or just a nudge in the right direction. If you are willing to change. And our characters are more than willing. And this is where Watanabe realizes something. He actually likes his job. When he was starting, he had the idea of how to make the system more efficient and productive, so that it could actually do its job and serve the people. He abandoned it out of fear of being ridiculed for trying to do something. But now is his chance. You, women, you want a park? I'll give you a park. And he went into the office of the mayor, punched him in the face while giving an empowering speech, and the mayor was so moved by his assertiveness that he had dropped everything that he was doing and immediately gave the order to build the park. And they erected the statue of Kanji Watanabe, and everyone lived happily ever after. Kanji Watanabe is dead. See, that ending that I just made up is how we are trained to think the story will play out. Our overlords, Disney and Hollywood, have managed over the course of their very long career to create unrealistic expectations of how your life is supposed to look like. How progressing on the job looks like. An artistic life, an autistic life. Every struggle can resolve in less than 3 hours.
We're gonna need a montage, a sports training montage.
There's always a happy ending or a meaningful sad conclusion. The constant bombardment of this message creates this unrealistic fairy tale that has no bearing on the real world, but we let it happen because we love it. There is no secret to how our brain works. We like cathartic moments. We want to be a part of the world where anything is possible. Take this scene from Fight Club. It is stimulating, it is freeing. The whole movie is basically playing into our fantasy of fighting against the system, to escape the rat race, where by the time the movie is over, feel like you have escaped with them, but you didn't. We have a built-in drive to find solitude in fantasy, to hide or process the pain within us. But if the story is really good, you would only want to live in it. That's the sole mechanic of why people binge the show in one night. Because that world on the TV feels so much better than the real one. For just a second, you are on it. That is your life. But sooner or later, you have to wake up. And we wake up here, at Watanabe's wake. A mix of formal ceremony and informal gathering where colleagues, family and officials come to pay their respects. Everybody was basically there to claim his achievement as their own, mocking the dead man at his own funeral. The man who pushed the idea was not important, and they were there mostly to deny the allegations that he protested by dying in the park. It's clear they didn't truly know him or respect him while he was alive. One official even claims that Watanabe's final project, the children's playground, was really a team effort, or that it was just a coincidence it happened under his supervision. The truth is, the park was only built because the politicians saw it as a way to boost their ratings. He died with his only son hating him, completely clueless that he even had cancer. The only people that cared for him were the women for whom the park was built and Kimura, but we will get to him later. They bow deeply before his photo and thank Watanabe, sincerely and emotionally. This section stops everyone, and they start to grow curious as to why someone who hadn't done anything in 30 years of his life suddenly found the courage to step up to the corporates and do something. It was really strange and odd that someone in his position and his age would find the energy to basically push a boulder up the hill. And that is where I want to mention how our main character battled the bureaucrats. Because he's just not the archetype of a hero that we expect. He lacked agency. He was powerless. The only thing that he could do was beg the people in power to reconsider. Our heroic character is not an outlaw renegade who is here to fight the system, but is basically at the mercy of it. But he still does what he can. The officials, now emotional and drunk, start piecing together what actually happened, and rather superficially, much like the audience, contribute this newfound courage to his cancer. Beware of the man with nothing to lose. But let me ask you this. Have you met people who had just entered retirement, who for some reason decided that the best way to spend their final days is to sit in front of a TV and wait to die? 30 years of sitting and wasting time. They, more than anyone, know that their time is limited. And that is why Kanji Watanabe is special. So realizing this, Watanabe's colleagues break down crying, promising to live like Watanabe and to make a difference. His death has changed their lives and inspired them to do something meaningful. And the next scene is Kurosawa straight up mocking people who take that message from the story. The next day, we see the same men back at their desk, stamping papers, bowing to superiors and doing nothing different. Their vows evaporate in the machinery of bureaucracy. Like I said before, the real change doesn't happen overnight. To change someone's character, you need many small steps, repeated over time. And they only work if the person is willing to change in the first place. Someone might show you the right direction, but it takes courage, a quiet, stubborn kind of courage, to keep walking that path long enough to see results. The only character who truly learns from Kanji Watanabe's sacrifice is Kimura. He protests for a moment, standing against the system, before ultimately being pulled back into it. That shot of him sitting at his desk is suffocating. You can almost feel him drowning in that paperwork. So yes, it might seem like Watanabe's work was for nothing. One small park under a bridge, and that's all he left behind. Most people will forget him and what he did, but not Kimura. Every time he crosses that bridge on his way to work, he will be reminded of the direction he once wanted to take. He doesn't have the strength yet, and maybe he never will, but he knows where to look. Kanji Watanabe died in the park, content, knowing he had left something meaningful behind. As the policeman said, he had never seen anyone so at peace. And that's the point. Instead of glorifying sudden transformation or miracle moments, we should focus on the quiet act of guiding someone, even just slightly, towards the right path. Change doesn't happen in a flash. It builds slowly, quietly until one day it becomes real. Even at the end of his career, while receiving the Oscar, Kurosawa said that he still doesn't understand what cinema is. And that is the main difference between his movies and the rest. Oscars and awards are not the goal, but rather steps along our journey. Whatever your line of work is, you are creating something, and we owe it to ourselves to enjoy it and to share that enjoyment with other people. And then we will truly find a way to be happy. In the near future, I'll be making a full review of his other legendary film, The Seven Samurai. So subscribe and like this video if you want to see that. For now, thank you for watching this video, have a wonderful day, and see you in the next one.